All right, we're live.
Hi, everyone. We're going to get started in just a minute here, but this is a Q&A session, so don't wait and send in your questions in the comments, and we'll get started in a minute.
All right, let's get started.
Okay, sure. So I'm Helen Partlow. I'm an attorney at Waypoint Immigration. So I specialize in EB-2 and IWs, which is why we're here. I thought that we would do a Q&A kind of session since there's usually so many different questions and I'm not really sure if it's on the topic or not, but anything that you have, question related to EB-2 and IW, feel free to pop it in the comments. And if you're watching this on the replay, you can still pop it in a comment and I'll come back and take a look at anything that might have come in later. But while you guys are maybe thinking of questions to put down, I would just do a quick overview of EB-2 and IW. It's the national interest waiver, second preference for employment-based immigration. You can apply for it anywhere within the world. So it's not like country specific, because I actually had a question on that. Someone sent me in a question. Can people from India apply? Yes, anywhere in the world. That's not what makes you eligible. What makes you eligible is what you are doing as far as your job, your activities, your contributions to whatever your industry is. So those have to be in the national interest of the United States, and it has to be impactful beyond just your employer. So that is where you see, if what you are doing really aligns with the EB-2 NIW. And this does not require employer sponsorship. So you are able to apply on your own for yourself. You're able to switch employers. You're able to kind of just do what is naturally beneficial for your career, as long as you kind of stay in that same roadmap that you outline in your application. Obviously, you'd have to stay in whatever status if you are already here in America. This does not grant you status. If you are outside of America, it does not grant you status. So either way, you wouldn't be able to come here on some sort of EB-2 status while you wait for your green card. So if you are here, typically people are on H-1B. Sometimes they're on like F-1 OPT or something like that. So this will grant you a green card, but you have to just wait in line for your priority date to become current. Then when you get your green card, that's when you become a green card holder, and that's your status. That's your ticket, or so to speak, to America. If you're outside of America, or you're then able to switch to that if you're already in America. So that's just a quick brief overview as to what it is. I don't know if anyone has sent in questions, or if you want to just get started with some general questions that you find, that's fine too.
So no questions so far. One question that comes up a lot is, how do I come up with a proposed endeavor?
So proposed endeavors are just a fancy way of saying what your future plan is in America. So what will you do here that's impactful? And it's talking about your prospective impact, which means your impact that will happen. It's not necessarily your impact that has already happened, although that is important to kind of show that if you've already been impactful, you're therefore more likely to be impactful in the future. But your proposed endeavor is really a roadmap showing the officer how you will be impactful to America, to your industry. How are you going to be beneficial beyond your employer? So are you helping some sort of like a health initiative where there's going to be, public health is going to be improved. Maybe you're doing something with diagnosing or treatments, medical devices. Maybe you're doing something to help make America more technologically innovative. You're in AI, machine learning, something with data analytics, where all those things kind of intersect. Maybe you are doing that for the finance industry, or you're doing it for retail and you're helping, bring small businesses up to speed. I've seen some people do that as well as part of their proposed endeavor, where they're helping small businesses become more technologically innovative. You could do other things like helping bring the semiconductor chip and the supply chain back to America. Doing all of these kinds of things is impactful beyond just your company. So they're having economic impact, they're having a potential health impact, helping with technology. It could even have like some sort of cultural impact as well. So these are the different things that we argue in the application, then all that has to do with your proposed endeavor, which is what's your plan. And they don't want to just know a generic plan. They want to know a plan that you as an individual can do. So it's not just about showing how your field is important or how your field is innovative or things like that. They want to know specifically about you. What are you going to do? Maybe what are your methods? What technologies do you use? What techniques will you implement? If you're not in America already, then they'll want to know, well, who will you probably work for? Like, what kind of job? Is there a need for someone with your skills in America? How would that kind of help solve the problems that are currently, the challenges, the problems and whatnot in America? How are you going to help move those things forward and make things better? So that's what they want to know. And, like I said, everything is about what your proposed endeavor is. So showing that specific avenue, as specific as you can. Of course, no one has some sort of magic 8-ball where you can predict the future as to how things will completely go. But the more specific, and like if you can show the officer that you've really thought this through in detail and have a solid common sense way of going about it, that's going to have the officer know, like, okay, well, this makes sense. This person can do these things. I can see how that's impactful. And that will help them understand the 3 prongs that you have to also discuss in this kind of application. So they all stem back to that proposed endeavor.
So Alfonso asks, would I be able to work while waiting for my status to be current if I'm already located in the U.S.?
That depends on what status you're in. If you're in H-1B status, yes, you can, continue being in whatever status you're in. If you're in a status that does not allow you to have, employment authorization, then no, you wouldn't. This does not impact your current status at all. So whatever your current status is, whatever those rules are, you have to stay compliant inside of that specific visa while you wait for your application to be approved, and then you still have to do it that way until your priority date becomes current, and then you could adjust your status. So even if you have an approved I-140, that doesn't give you a status. You still have to wait for that visa bulletin to show your date is current so you can adjust your status.
Charles asks, does your office provide services such as helping applicants respond to RFEs, even if you weren't part of the initial original write-up and application?
So the short answer is no. We do not respond to just standalone RFEs unless we were the original person that sent in the application. However, I have had many consultations. Typically people want to do like an hour kind of review. We usually do consultations in 25 minutes, but we do offer 60-minute consultations, and RFEs usually kind of need that additional time where, you would send us your RFE, we can go into the consultation, we can go through it together and kind of answer your questions and tell you what stands out to us as to, different things to kind of overcome and give you some ideas as to how to do it. Obviously, if you had an attorney do your original application, I'm assuming they would also be the one to do your RFE. So if you did do this on your own, it might make sense to reach out, but you can also reach out, for a second opinion if you needed to, if you did have an attorney do this. I've done it both ways, where people had attorneys and still got an RFE, or didn't have an attorney and got an RFE. So either way, it would be done just through the consultation time.
Caesar asks, if I'm creating a prototype, a small computer as a proposed endeavor, is it a good idea to send the prototype in the application?
Well, I'm assuming you mean like some sort of model or plan for the prototype, because this is a paper submission. So what it is, we mail it to USCIS and they scan it in. It's a giant waste of paper. But if it's anything that, it sounds like you are doing it yourself, not through a company. I would going to say if anything is sensitive data, you can redact information, but definitely showing maybe how the prototype will be used, plans for the prototype, um, things related to how that is different maybe than things that already exist, how it's innovative. And, more importantly, if you had any sort of reports that would maybe try to show its prospective impact on your industry or the economy or something like that, I think all of that additional documentation would be impactful.
Priya asks, how long does it usually take to build a case for EB-2 and NW?
So that's a really interesting question because that's definitely very different for everybody. Some people just naturally progress and they already have a profile and they don't maybe even realize it. But I would say it's definitely individual to the person. They're looking to see how have you been impactful beyond your company. What are you doing that's innovative or new, or how is it impactful to, like I said already, the economy or public health or technology or something. They also want to see how are you helping beyond just your employer. So that is kind of more historically about publications, but that's not always normal in every sort of industry. So it may not be publications for you, but maybe it's presenting at a conference, or maybe it's getting a bunch of like certifications that are related to what you do to show that you are knowledgeable in the area, that you stand out from the other people in your field. Maybe you've been a judge on a panel or won some sort of an award, or maybe you're in part of a mentorship program for other professionals in the industry. Somehow sharing your specialized knowledge with other professionals in the field is a good way of showing things. Maybe you have a patent that's related to something that you created. Those are just kind of some ideas as to what you could do. A lot of the time, people do apply and they rely heavily on their current job role, and they're able to show some work documents on projects that they are doing. But then the question becomes, how are you helping more than just your employer? So you really have to be able to answer that question in a way that is like common sense for the officer to see, and you have to have some sort of documentation to prove that what you are doing has a broader impact than just for your company or like an end client sort of thing.
Who asks, do I have to stay in my current industry job after submitting my NIW petition?
So you have to stay in your
Helen, are you still there? Or is it my end?
Sorry, can you see and hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, it looks like my internet went in and out.
So,
Hopefully it's okay now.
yeah, we can hear you. So going back to Vikram's question, do I have to stay in my current industry job after submitting my NIW petition?
So you have to stay on the pathway of your proposed endeavor. So that is not as specific to a job or a company. You have to be doing the things that you are telling the government you will do. So if you are going to be helping bring the semiconductor manufacturing back to America, that is what you have to continue to do. You have to continue to progress in that goal. You have to keep working on that. You can't just suddenly shift gears to working on a biomedical device or something like that. You have to stay in that same realm. It is a little bit trickier for those that are from India because the backlog is so long that you might be okay if you stray a little bit, through however long you have to actually wait. But as long as you are back in your proposed endeavor field, by the time you would be able to get your green card and maybe also explain why you shifted along the way in case that does come up as a question. But yeah, it's definitely the best if you can just stay in whatever the roadmap is that you're outlining to the government. So that way, when you do get to do your green card, there's no like red flags or anything that they could ask about, like, why did you not continue doing what you were doing? Because that's what your green card is based on.
Sandra asks, can an L1B visa holder apply for EB-2 NIW without jeopardizing their current status? What happens to their L1B renewal if the EB-2 NIW petition is still pending or gets denied?
So usually from what I understand, this doesn't really interact too much. So even those that are on different kind of visa types, you can still apply for the NIW and see if you can get it without any sort of like implication. So it should probably still be fine.
Teja asks, was having H1B status and because of layoff changed status to B2? My party date is current. Can I still apply for EB2 and IW? Or do we need to wait to COS to H1?
So I'm confused because it says your priority date is current, but you still want to apply for an NIW. So I'm not sure what the priority date is from. Maybe you did the perm process from the job that you got laid off of, and then you are on B2 now. You have to still be with that company in order to get your green card from that perm process. So it doesn't sound like you would be able to get your green card since you no longer work there. But if you are on B2, which is the visitor visa, of course, it's a little bit trickier because it is a non-immigrant intent, so you're supposed to not intend to stay. But you could still probably do the EB2 NIW and apply, whether or not you would be jeopardizing any sort of, like what happens once your B2 is done. If you are able to get a job, then you can switch back to H1B. That would probably be the best, as you're saying, wait for your change of status back to H1B. I guess my scenario that I'm thinking of is that if you're applying for EB2 and IW while you're on B2 and you're not able to find a new job, and then you're at the end of your B2 status, you might have to end up leaving the country if you can't find an H1B employer, or there could be some other options, but I would say for this scenario, it's probably best to talk about all those additional details that I can't really get in this kind of a platform. So, we do consultations all the time, especially for those that are laid off. So if you go to our website under appointments, you can just get one that says laid off consultation. And I would probably suggest doing that just to get more details because, the different timelines matter, the dates matter, and there's a lot of other things that might come into play here.
Caesar says I was referring to send the actual prototype, the actual device.
No, this is a paper submission. There's no physical item to send to USCIS. They wouldn't know what to do with that anyway. So
Brian asks, does NIW application affect F1 OPT STEM extension?
normally probably not, but considering things as they are these days, that's kind of unsure at this point. It's because F1 students are kind of getting targeted in a lot of ways, and you're supposed to show non-immigrant intent. Typically it would be fine. Like, I've applied for many people that are in F1 OPT, and there's never really been an issue, but we're kind of in a new kind of landscape going on right now. Just because Trump seems to be like questioning everything and telling everybody to question everything in these applications. So, depending upon the timing of that, it might be more strategic to apply after your extension for an NIW. But that sounds, very specific to you as an individual applicant. So I would also suggest a consultation just to discuss like the timing, how far away it is versus how soon your application is going to be done, and that sort of a thing.
So no other questions. So another one that comes up a lot is, should I go for EB-1A or NIW?
Yeah, so I mean, it might make sense to do an EB-1A if you have a lot of those activities already under your belt. Maybe you have publications, maybe you've been to conferences, maybe you already have that leading or critical role and original contribution. So we like to call the leading or critical role and then the original contribution criteria as like an anchor criteria, where they're really important to kind of show in an application. That way, because you have to meet that final merits argument there to show that you are at the top of your field, and those kind of criteria are helpful versus if you did like, judge role, salary, and authorship. They may all three be accepted, but they all may not show that final merit determination. So I guess, sorry, what was the original direction there? I like lost train of thought.
So NIW versus EB-1A?
Oh, yes, sorry. So if you already have a lot of those things and you might actually be eligible for EB-1A, you can get your green card sooner, especially those in India, because the backlog for NIW is extremely long. However, most people do the NIW first, because if you can meet EB-1A, you most likely meet NIW. I mean, it depends on your field if what you are doing is impactful and has that national importance aspect. If it does have that national importance aspect, a lot of people do NIW first to kind of lock in their priority date, and then they're able to maybe do some additional profile building for an EB-1A, and then they can use that date from their NIW to apply it to your EB-1A, so that way you're able to hopefully adjust your status a lot faster. Your wait time will be a lot less and that sort of a thing. But if you don't have work that is in the national interest, it might make sense to just skip the NIW and go straight for that EB-1A and try to nail those type of criteria instead.
Alka asks, can one travel outside the USA after submitting a petition for a green card for EB-2 NIW while I-140 is still pending?
So, that also depends on what your current status is. If you're an H-1B holder and you have a pending I-140, you are, free to kind of come and go, because H-1B is dual intent. But if you are at the stage where you are adjusting your status and you have submitted your I-485, then it is most definitely suggested to not travel, because during that 485 pending stage, you might be seen as abandoning your green card application. So, it depends on what your initial visa is if you were on with a pending I-140 application. But if I just say H-1B because that's the most common, and then it should be fine. It's just really the I-485 green card application that you can travel.
All right. Anything else you want to cover? I don't see any other questions.
No, I mean, I would say if you are looking to do an EB-2 NIW, trying to gather as much paper documentation is really important. things that are concrete, that show your impact, anything that has results, that other people are using what you're creating, that you are results driven, where maybe you increased efficiency by 12% or you saved X amount of dollars for something. Anything that has those really measurable outcomes, I think, are really important. Maybe you helped increase, the diagnostic tools for something, so people are more likely to know that they have cancer sooner. I'm just giving examples, of course. Anything that is concrete is really good. Also, if you have been, involved in activities such as judging or conferences or authorship, don't just save the invitation that you were invited. Save what you actually did, because anyone could be invited. That doesn't mean that you went. We need proof that you went, what you did there, maybe some sort of metrics, like if you're doing a judging activity, what were the criteria you were basing everything on, any sort of maybe a dashboard when you log in. And also, if you are using things like screenshots, I would highly suggest not using screenshots and instead printing to PDF, because the officers want to see that URL. They want to see that email that, had the proper email address on there. Screenshots don't always show anything. Like I've seen people send in things that have to do with an event that they went to, but it was just like the graphic. Like, no, I want to know, where was it posted? What website was it on? Information about the conference you went to, information on the judge activity that you did. We need to know a lot more than you think. So having keeping track of all those things really helps show the officer. Don't forget, they're looking for reasons to deny you at this point, more than they're looking for reasons to approve you. So don't give them any room to make up their own mind. You want to make sure that you're almost like hitting them over the head with the amount of, things that you have. So, I always say, don't think that the officer is going to come to the same conclusion as you. You cannot assume anything. You want to make sure that you're showing strong evidence. You don't want to just throw everything at them and see what sticks. You want to make sure that you're being mindful. But if you did do a really important judge panel, you want to make sure you have the strong evidence to show that you did do these things. What did you judge? How did they select you as a judge? What types of things did you judge, and what criteria were you judging them against? These are all the kinds of questions that they're going to want to know. So really having a well laid out paper trail is good. Same thing with like the jobs that everyone has, looking for maybe emails, things that are saying that you did a great job or had some sort of measurable impact, any sort of report. Maybe you did an internal presentation to your department or your team. Copies of what your slideshow was is helpful. Anything that we can show that you are doing what you are doing, and to show the officer that you are likely to continue to do these things, that you are well suited to do these things, and that these things are impactful. So I would say the strongest applications are the ones that have the best evidence, for sure, because even a reference letter, you can have a reference letter from, Jesus or God, or like literally the best reference letter in the world. But if you don't have any documents to back it up, you need to have that objective third party evidence to back up the reference letters and your petition letter. So definitely having a very well laid out and proper paper trail, I think, is really crucial to these types of things.
So just two more questions. Caesar asks if I'm an O1A, have a national interest proposed endeavor, but don't have the typical profile for EB-1A, like being a speaker, publications, citations, etc. Can I still apply for EB-1A?
O1s are similar to EB1s, but they're a lower threshold. So you might be on track, and maybe you would need to do some profile building to bridge the gap from an O1 to an EB1. So you may not fully be there, but there's a different criteria to hit, like not just like judge role or authorship, but you can also have media attention and high salary, leading a critical role, original contribution. So there's different things that you might be able to target that make sense for your industry and for your career. But yeah, we do consultations all the time for EB1As, and we can kind of help show you, where you're at now, maybe some suggestions on how to do some profile building in order to get a stronger application. And we're also doing free EB1A and EB2 NIW assessments on our website. So if anyone is interested in doing either one and you think that you might have a good profile for, feel free to send in that form and we will get back to you as to what our thoughts are. And we also do consultations too. So EB1A consultations, EB2 NIW consultations, layoffs, or just career planning in general. So we have all those different kinds of options on our website.
Asking, as a J visa holder with waivers complete, is it okay to travel outside USA with pending I-140?
That's an interest. I would definitely think that needs a consultation. I don't think I would be able to fully answer that without having some more back and forth details on that one.
All right. So, yeah, that was the last question.
All right, great. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.